I want to make you a wager. Does God exist? And let's just make it easy. 50-50. I don't have a coin in front of me or a quarter, but I mean, this is a philosophical question anyway, so what is a quarter? But seriously, 50-50 chance. Does God exist? It's quite the philosophical question, isn't it? Does God exist? I mean, and I think it's fair to say that a lot of us and most of society has continued to contend with this question for quite some time. And with that, we had a mathematician, a philosopher, a pretty notable figure called Blaise Pascal. And he was French philosopher, French mathematician. So if my French was pretty bad there, well, you can go ahead and correct me. But Blaise Pascal put forward what is now known as Pascal's Wager, that God does exist. That if you put it down in its simplest term, 50-50 chance, because who's really to know the likelihood that God does or doesn't? So 50-50 chance. God does, and if he does, or God doesn't, and if he doesn't. So let's say that he just doesn't, and maybe someone is already letting me know that he does in fact. But let's say he doesn't. Then if he doesn't, you die, nothing, right? Fade to black. And if you believe that, then congrats, you're right. And if you don't believe that, then did it even matter? Questionable. But then does God exist? And what if he does? 50-50 chance. So let's dive further into this in today's Gen Ed class. Okay, Pascal and his wager. Does God exist? 50-50 chance. Well, we understand if we look at it as no, God does not in fact exist, and I believe I'm going to bet on the 50-50 chance that God does in fact not exist. Okay. Turns out that you were wrong. Or turns out that you were right. Let's go with that first. Turns out that you were right. God does not exist. Okay? Doesn't exist. Fade to black. Nothing. Okay. Well, now let's say that God does exist. If you are then wrong, fade to black. Doesn't really matter. All right. So if it's a 50-50 chance, we are noticing that there's 4 possible outcomes. And we know that half of those possible outcomes are fade to black, nothingness. All right. So now if you don't believe that God exists, you wager that and you end up being wrong, God does exist. Well, perhaps that leads to banishment or hell or whatever the eternal suffering may be, because you didn't believe in God, and maybe that caused you to act a certain way, and you didn't care to follow whatever the rules ended up actually being, and so blah blah blah. You deal with what you deal with, and then we have the final, which is yes, I believe God exists. I wager that He does, and from there you are right. And hopefully that leads to eternal salvation, heaven, and all that wonderful splendor. But at least then, you ended up being right. There is that after step. Now, this is quite a question, isn't it? Does God exist? Pascal's Wager. It has so far been one of the easiest and simplest ways, and frankly for myself has been one of the ways that has helped me just try and simplify such a deep question. And then from there, put myself into a place where although I did grow up Catholic and I still consider myself Catholic and still do follow most of, if not the majority, I can't say all confidently, the Catholic practices, the point in that being is that I am at least choosing to believe that God does exist, because if I'm right, hallelujah, and if I'm wrong, does it even matter? Because frankly, if I'm given between the two choices of He does or He does not, and if I go ahead and really believe that He does not, what does that lead me to live like? That, in my opinion, sounds like a very nihilistic potential reality to live. Because then, okay, God doesn't exist. What's the point? What's the purpose? Why are we here? well, if God doesn't exist, why are we here? I don't know. It kind of seems like a lot of bullshit. Are we here just to suffer? Because the fact is as well that suffering is a part of reality. Pain is for sure. I mean, it's a required signal for survival so that we understand, hey, avoid that, right? No, bad, pain, no, avoid, not good. And of course, those that don't have pain receptors end up hurting themselves very, very badly, right? So if God does exist, I would rather that be the case, because if he doesn't, and then just nihilistic whatever, I don't know about you, but I feel like that would lead me to a much more depressive state a lot faster. I feel like it'd be a lot harder to stay motivated in anything that I do, because look, it's a deep question, and there are people, perhaps you, that are very willing to make such staunch lines. No, I absolutely do. I absolutely do not. And there's no way of looking around it. Now, I can understand why someone wouldn't believe. Heck, it only makes sense. Why would it make sense for everyone to believe? I mean, if it's a 50-50 chance that God does or does not exist, why should we expect that it's going to be anything else but at least a 50-50 split between people? I mean, there's just no way we're going to have 100% of people willing to bet the same way. On top of the fact that people, when they're betting, like to make risks, right? All right, you know what? Fuck it. God doesn't exist. I'm going to go that way. Oh, damn, I really screwed up there. Guess it's hell for me. But it would have been pretty convenient had I bet the right way. You know, you don't really know. So on the same side, for those that do staunchly believe in God and hold a very heavy religious moral framework, like, it's good to have that, just don't impose that on anybody. And same on the other side. You know, there's secularism, when I'm using the word ism just in its ideological sense to put the message through, not because it's actually a religion like Catholicism might be. But my point in that is that secularism, there is this sect or this group of people that do genuinely believe or act in a way where it's like, no. Not only do I not believe in God, but it is messed up and absolutely wrong for you to go ahead and place the opposing wager that God does exist and believe that this is real. You know, and it's like, okay, I see your point in not wanting to like believe it, but again, to those on the religious side, don't impose it. To those on the secular side, don't impose your beliefs onto other people. You're not right. Neither are anyone else. Is anyone else? Neither am I. Neither are you. That's kind of the fun point to this question, frankly, right? We can have fun conversations and discussions and debates around potentialities, because we know at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It just really helps fill time and conversation, hopefully. And I really, really just love this, though, because at least for myself, on a personal note with Pascal's Wager, it helps just simplify my head a lot. Because why walk around with this big question of what to believe when we can just boil it down to the simple, does God exist, this infinite, omnipresent, higher authority, higher being, or does he not? I would rather go with he does, for the exact reasons as outlined. Because if I believe that he doesn't, and I'm wrong, then he did, and I should have. And if I don't believe that he does, and I'm right, then it doesn't matter. But if I do believe that he exists and I'm wrong, then it doesn't matter. And if I do believe that he exists and act accordingly, then I should be better off, in the afterlife or whatever that really looks like. But it's a wager at the end of the day. You can play the game, you can make the call, but I wanted to go ahead and share with you Pascal's Wager and how he made the call to help simplify his thought process when it came to what he believed and his beliefs, his religion, his way of life. Hopefully this gives you some clarity in answering that for yourself. Do you believe God exists? Yes or no? 50-50 chance. What do you want to go with? And if you're at all curious, why not just ask your friends? Hey, have you heard about Pascal's Wager? I actually was just learning about it on the Gen Ed show, and I think about it this way, but this is what it is, and this is like, what do you think? Right? Go ahead and share the show to your friends and family and figure out what they would wager, whether or not God exists. Have fun conversations around it. Ask us or share with us on socials what you thought about it, and we'll go ahead and see you in the next Gen Ed class. Have a great one.